Hello YouTube, I'm Darren Ruggin and thanks for checking out this video. This is a continuation of the public build series, and in this particular video I'm focusing on Angular 10 and reusable components. And inside those reusable components, which I introduced in the last two videos, we're going to be doing the change detection. So if you have a variable being passed in and it's being changed, that the component is aware of that change and can make a decision on how to do that. And we're going to do that with the introduction of the Pokemon card into our Poke app. If that interests you, stick around. And thanks for sticking around. So as I was saying, this is a continuation of the build series. I will put a link up here. I will get it right first time one of these days. To the card to the previous video if you would like to watch that up to this point. But just to recap, we have an Ionic app with Angular 10, and we have went through from scratch, creating a blank project, adding different components, side navs, services, some pages, and then we added some reusable components. So we start with the nav bar, which was in the last video, and how that nav bar has got a mechanism to be configurable on different usages. And on this video, what we're going to do is we're going to build the Pokemon card, and in particular, we're going to focus on the change detection. So if I've got a Pokemon card visible and I select through a couple of different Pokemon, it will correctly realize that the data has changed and update its rendering or logic or whatever it needs to do, versus receiving that information when it starts. Stick around, you'll see what I mean. So let's get into the code. All right, welcome back to the coding. If you have not seen the project before, I've got a slightly new layout. I had a widescreen monitor. I'm trying to figure out the best way of doing it. So hence the sort of bar across the bottom now, and my head is a little bit out of the code now. Hopefully this will just move me over a little bit more. Look, I'm moving. Get me there, I think. That's the least impact. Actually, I preferred myself there. All right, let me leave me here. So we're using VS Code, as you can see, and then we just have a browser window on the right running Ionic Serve at the minute. So we're just using the web implementation version of that, and then we're just in the project here. As I mentioned before, you can have a look at the project if you are unsure, and this is the first time you've seen this video. I'll run through a very quick overview, but if you're interested, you can go check out the full playlist or just the last two videos in particular, where I focus on components, reusable components, which have data passed in and eventing out rather than any sort of internally managed state. So anyway, let's get back to the point that we were. So as you can see in this project structure, here's the app. And then we have the top level application. We're mounting the material UI components. Inside the app, we have we currently have some side navs, a left side nav, a cent and a right side nav, and then the outer outlet itself. As you can see here on the left, here's the router outlet. There's one side nav here, and then if we go to like Pokemon, for example, I will now load the Pokemon, and if I click here, you will see it pop out with the data loaded on the right. Now, this data obviously doesn't look very nice, and we want to do something about that. But we probably also want to have like a detail page that we can go to, and we probably want a reusable component. So when you want to see what it looks like, Pokemon looks like, then you can be able to reuse that through your app. Now, realistically, we have all probably had these Pokemon cards. Okay, so this would be sort of the design idea that we'd be using, and if you can have a look, there's my daughter's favorite one, Jigglypuff. She has a few Jigglypuffs. It has, the picture, and it has some text on the bottom, and then some additional information. Now if we look at what comes back from the API, if we click one of these, you'll see that there's a Json Payload which is being returned here. Down here on the right, you'll see that I can see the moves, the order, species, and then here's some sprites, for example. So these can then populate the picture. So I can actually use the card that comes as part of So these cards come as part of the design pattern from Material UI. So you can have a look at the actual design of Material UI and try to understand the theory behind how these work and the design principles. But what we're basically going to do, as you can see, they've got a divide. So if you're planning on using these in any mean way, I would recommend that you give this a read to try to understand what the design paradigm is trying to do. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to the Angular card. And as you may remember, we actually used this card earlier in our code, and we have it just dumped out to the home page with a hard-coded value here. As you can see, we have it right here. So we want to turn this into a component that we can then pass in a Pokemon and have a consistently rendered thing. This is a reusable component, as is with the side nav. So we'll be able to take that component or that UI widget and use that throughout the application, understanding that we have a consistent view of what it looks like. I also demonstrated in the previous video how you can inject different behavior or buttons to have context at the use case of it, rather than it being completely isolated. So you'll see that in the second nav video, where I have the ability to do additional actions on a page. So we could use a card and then potentially pass in some additional rendering or buttons to allow us to do different behaviors. So it doesn't have to be fully generic to be reused. Anyway, let's get started in the coding. Just to recap, we're creating a new component, being the Pokemon card, and we're going to be putting some change detection in there because that is important. If you have a card, let's say we had a hand, for example, and we had several cards, and you wanted to click through and see each one, that card would always be rendered on the page. So the changing of the input data will not necessarily be detected without change detection plugged in. Now, if you were rendering into a new tab, like I have with the side nav, that's going away and coming back again, I believe that will work correctly because it's doing a new render, and the new render receives it as an input, and we've already seen that that's working and processed. It's more to do with when it's on the page and things are changing around it. So if it's part of a larger interface, say it's part of a preview window that's always visible rather than the side nav disappearing and re-rendering, that's probably where it gets more useful. But at the same time, this is a good place for me to cover that. Okay, so let's jump in. ls. We have the terminal window running down within virtual code. So let's just go to the app, to the source app components. Now, I have a slight directory structure where I like to separate out, still use the Ionic idea of pages. So to me, a page is a writable component, not like a reusable widget. I go to a page that has got a URL, and it's also generally responsible for the binding of data into the services. And then these pages consume your components, as well as having stuff just in that page. So if it's only ever going to be used once, then I might just put it directly in the page. If I think it might be reused in multiple pages, I'll try to extract that into a reusable component that I can then plug into multiple locations. Anyway, so services, pages, and components. So in components, you can see we've already started with the navbar component. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do Ionic using the CLI. I'm going to generate a component, and I'm going to call it Pokemon card. Okay, so generate component Pokemon card. Here we go. So I now have a Pokemon card that's generated, the HTML, the CSS, a test spec file, and then the code. And then the next thing I need to do is just put it in the shared component. Sometimes I might split these shared components up into multiple different components. Because you wouldn't normally mount necessarily this Pokemon card as often as I would mount the other shared components, but sometimes I'll do that as a refactor rather than straight away. But in this particular one, I probably would have it in a separate module because the reality is I will do it numerous times. Shared module, component, component, component. Then I will need to what's wrong? Card component, that's what I've called it. So nav card component, and then I want to declare this component as part of this module, and then I also want to export it, which makes it that if you import this module you can actually get access to this particular component. Okay, so now that we have that component plugged in, we already have the shared module plugged into some of these pages, for example. So we have a look at this module, you can see that this module is plugging in the shared components module. So the Pokemon card's already there, and anywhere that it was plugged in, because that module is already imported, we now have access to the components within that. So realistically, I'd probably create those navigation shared components in more of a generic shared component thing, which is going to be imported significantly more than the Poke card, which would have less reusability. And that modules is more about what gets loaded into memory. I don't want everything loaded into memory, I only want the minimum required. So there's always a balancing act. I could put them all in their own separate module, but that just feels like a pain in the butt for not a lot of extra value at this point, especially if it's going on a phone. Let's just jump into the home page, which I think we've just dumped some HTML. There we go. There we go. Let's just grab this and drop it in here. Pokemon card. Okay. So right at the top. And let's call this Pokemon card. Okay. This will be the Pokemon header image. I'll just call it Pokemon image. Title, subtitle, we'll get to those. Let's just call this title, subtitle. Let's just create these parameters now. The back of it so you can see a little more. Title, string, subtitle, string. Okay. So then we have the image source. So I'll do this as image source string. I'll then bind that in. Source on my binding equals image source. I'll just take that for now. Photo of a Pokemon. I don't think the sprites have individual alt texts to populate that. Okay, so then we'll say that this is going to be content text. Back to here, content text string. Alright, back to Pokemon card, and then some buttons. I might just leave these buttons in for now, and let's just leave. We'll come back to the buttons. Okay, Pokemon card. So as you can see, I'm really creating these 4 separate data, which is the local state for this given component. But I'm not going to pass those in. What we're really going to pass in is we're going to have an input of a Pokemon which I will say is going at this point to be an NA because I have not created a Pokemon type. Pokemon, declaration of a field, input Pokemon. What's wrong here? Oh, I know. I'm missing the at input, and then it won't have that. So let's fix and input. Yep, we want to add input. Okay, and that will do for now, I believe. But the next thing we want it to do is we want it to implement on changes. Now on changes is the change detection. So add it to the core. Now it will also tell me that I don't have it implemented. So implement. So now we will see that we now have an on change method. Okay. Now on change is very useful because if the state is changing while you're doing stuff, you can actually determine what change is there, and if the change is beneficial, do you take it or do you not take it? Okay, but just for now, I will, and I like doing this, and I sometimes leave this in but toggle it, just to see changes. Okay, and then const the change changes prop name, and that then gives me the actual change. So I'm going to look through the changes as they come in. I get the pulling the key out, and then I'm getting the actual change. And so then what I can do is like const current value equals like json.stringify. Yep, and then some change dot current value, and then I'll also do const current value previous value, which also is json.stringify change dot previous value. Okay, so now we have both of these. Then I can just do a console log. So console, but I do change log. So I can create like a string version of this, and I'll be like prop name. Prop name current dollar current val previous. Now I hope you probably can see the main things that I do regularly, which is ensure data flow is working before doing anything else. Alright, so current prop name, current value, previous value. Alright, and then so I can now do console.log change logged, and then I can do change log. Okay, so new line there. Let's see what you're complaining about. Okay. Alright, quick fix, add df. Wants a bit of defensive coding. If changes, which makes sense, sort of. If changes are there. Go away, linter. Alright, so now we've done that. So for if must be filtered with an if. Okay, I've done that. And that one. You're just gonna keep, I don't think that was gonna go away. Disable. Yeah. There we go. Well done. Tell that one to go away. And then the extra space. I don't think this one correctly is identifying the for in when I put that if changes. Maybe I'm just doing it wrong. It's hard to tell sometimes. Well, I could probably go look it up, but I'm just too lazy. Alright, so here's the on changes. So what does that mean? That means that when the input, being the Pokemon data, is changed, then at that point we'll know about it. So let me just create another method in here, and we'll call it. Why is the ng init out there? What did I do? Oh, I just scrolled too far. You silly fool. Okay, so we'll do populate Pokemon data, and I will take a Pokemon. And I'll do Pokemon. Pokemon dot. What do we got here? Pokemon dot name. I'm gonna do this. This dot title. A Pokemon name. This dot subtitle. What else have we got? Name, species. Okay, just trying to see what other data we have here to populate. Normally you might go the opposite direction of what do we want, and you're designing your own API and making sure that you're returning it. Wait 100. Other. We got in here Dream World. Versions. Let's say types. Grass. And poison. I might put those in the context. It's just in the subtile. What I probably prefer to do is maybe put out its ID. Base experience. Let's just do its experience. Okay, so we can do experience. Alright. And let's just take the first sprite. So let's say we're going to have sprites, which we're going to say is a I don't. Yeah, I want an array of these. Okay, so that'll be the sprites. So let's set this dot sprites equals Pokemon dot sprite. Okay. Right, and then I'll set the image source. Dot image source equals sprite dot first. Does it have a first? Yes. Dot value. Yep. This dot sprites. Yeah, I didn't think it had a first. 0 value. Okay, so I'll take the first one, whatever that is, and default that into the image source. And I'm assuming that there is a sprite. I should potentially put either a placeholder in here or something else in case for some reason there is no sprite for a given Pokemon. Although, how much defensive code do you actually want to do? I'm not entirely sure. Okay, so we've got that, we've got the generation, slots, poison. I think I might put those in the content a little bit later. Let's go on with this. Okay, so we have got an input and on changes. I think we're ready to try to use you now. So app Pokecard. Let's see what happens. App Pokecard, and if we go to the app page, you'll see that right now we have this and nav data. Okay, and if we go, we should be able to take this and nav data and plug it in as a Pokemon, as that is the data that we are. Pokemon equals and nav data. Okay, so let's comment that line out. Have a look. Ionic serve. I upgraded to the Big Sur on my MacBook, and OBS seems to be running really slowly now. While I'm waiting for this to run, what do you think about my new background? I've taken my channel art from my YouTube channel as the base back. I am planning on doing weekly videos, not just coding tutorials as in running through the coding. I do plan come 2021 to be doing an open book launch of a brand new idea, trying to do some validation. What does this idea look like? How am I going to validate it? Then trying to do some validation to determine if it's worth doing. And to be honest, those products will probably use a fork of this project as the basis. So this is definitively going to be used numerous times. Although the Pokemon API part, maybe not so much. Maybe not so much. Okay, let's refresh this page here. Okay, so I have a bug, it looks like. Bug. Error app Pokemon card. Only fine. Okay, is that basically saying that doesn't want me to do this? I'm not 100% certain, but it looked like that's what it was saying. It didn't want me to. Okay, now we're getting a proper error. Alright. More like it. Missing Pokemon card component is missing data. Okay, let's have a look. So, let me just close this menu so I can see a bit more. For loop, that looks right. In the changes. Okay.
Populate Pokemon. That sort of looks right. Line 15 in the HTML. Oh, okay, it's in the HTML. Line 15. Don't like button context. Subtitles. What's wrong here? Because that's React, Darren, and this is Angular. I like both for different reasons. Alright, what have I missed? Parse template, line 9. So if I'm binding, let me do that too. Gosh, I should remember some of this. Do I need to put that in? Oh. Just do this. Press is not a non-element. What do you mean it's not a non-element? App Pokemon card is defined here as a selector. It is exported here and then imported. I am unsure why. So I know that I do need the change detector plugged in. So private Scout CD change detector ref. Yeah, I want that. Give it to me. Okay, so I definitely want that. And then I want to detect the change. Let's add this into the ng init. Let's also just say, so I can see something, this dot content text equals, let me see the text. Let me see the text. Alright, so populate Pokemon data, which I put in the change detector. No, I have not. I've not actually plugged that in anywhere. Of course it's not doing anything. So if Pokemon in changes Pokemon if that exists, yes, I know. I shouldn't use literal strings. Yes, I know. That should be called out here as the label. Anyway, we'll just ignore you for now. Tell TypeScript to go away. Fix disable for this line. I'm aware I shouldn't really do that. Alright, so then I will do this dot populate with the changes. Maybe I want to inspect it. So sometimes what I'll do is I'll do equals changes Pokemon dot current value, and then I'll take that Pokemon and I will populate that Pokemon. Yep, I know I should move it out. Let's just turn that off for now. And I'm back. Alright, now let's click on the link. And here my dog's snoring. Never end snorer. Inspect page. Well, here we go. Here's the app card right here. You know what we forgot to do? We haven't put in any stylings. So the card is there. Alright. What else? What else? Look at the on and it. Start to type changes. And I'm just gonna console out log the Pokemon this dot Pokemon just to see what is happening. I suspect I'm gonna have to look into that problem. Alright, did we have Pokemon details? 54, I think that's here. Let's just double check. I've had a bit of text. So what that would say to me is that the change detector, which is what I thought, I was just double checking, only takes changes and doesn't take the initial input. As you can see, the initial input is set. So I should really do this. Pokemon list. Metapod. Let's click on Metapod. Detail. Hold on. Oh, save this. Where did I put Pokemon detail? That's the right. That was before it was sent. Okay. Okay. I believe that it is part of that module because it's in the shared components module. Do I need to restart? It's in the exported card component module, and that module. Is that module loaded by the app module? Let's have a look. Maybe that is my problem here. Yes, I have loaded it into... I thought I had it loaded. So I've loaded it into, as you can see here, my homepage module. Here it is right here. I had forgotten to load it into my application module, which if I actually stopped and read this error message would tell me. Okay. App module. Import the shared module. Because I thought I had already done it, I hadn't actually checked, but that was not accurate. Oh, in the it's passing the string in. Hold on. It's the wrong one. For the nav bar. Nav bar. Unbinding. No, it's correct the string. That should be telling it to bind. I just made the wrong change. Back in my Pokemon. I don't know why I did that. I misread it completely. That should still be a string. But what it says is one-way bind to this variable. The name of this variable in my controller. Or name of this thing. Alright, so let's see, Charmander. What do we got? There you go, Charmander. Cannot read value of undefined. Okay. Two things, let's jump back in here. What did I do? I think they need data escaping in order for that syntax. So there's the current, so the change. It is firing. It is firing. So what's wrong with the Pokemon? Alright, let's have a look at the... What did I do? I made the sprites. Right. Oh, okay. I was incorrect. They basically have all the same. They are not. I was not correct in my understanding of what a sprite was. Alright, let's just make it an any because it is a dict itself. So if I want to populate, so we'll do sprites dot back default. I reckon they all have a back default. And Bulbasaur. There we go, there's a Bulbasaur. Baby got back. Let me see the text. Alright, it's getting there. So you could... interesting. So I did the image source. This one's got like an avatar image, if I remember correctly. Avatar image. Okay, so I think I can do like this in here and make it avatar image source. Boom. This dot avatar image source equals this dot sprites dot, what do we got sprite wise? So we get these sprites again. Alright, sprites back. Let's do front default. Alright, front default. And then the back default for the actual picture. Okay, so let's pop this up here. Make it also a string. It's containing URL. So that avatar div doesn't want to be set because it's not a real picture. So if I put this image inside, let's see what this looks like. I like to do a little bit of trial and error. At the end of the day, this is just getting the data on screen is the primary thing I'm trying to do. So this card avatar is probably not something I would even use just because of the real estate that we have here. I don't know if I put the picture in the top icon, and also if I look at some of these, you'll see that there is no sort of picture in the top icon from what we're sort of modeling it on being a Pokemon card. At least the ones that I have here, and that I've taken off my child because I'm a mean father. Can you hear my puppy snore? There we go, it looks a bit better. There's the front and there's the back, okay? I feel that that needs to be bigger. Like if that's my phone, let's change the styling to be a drawer slide. I want that to be 80%. Right, and I want padding to be 10, but I want padding top. Actually, let's just define all the padding one after the other. So I want padding. Let's just start with 10, 10, and 10. Okay, let's have a look what that looks like. Bulbasaur. Okay, that seems a bit big. Here. And this one. There's our 10, 10, and 10. So top. Let's make this one 40. Just want it to come down a bit. Alright. Drawer and then the other thing I'd probably do is do display, say flex, and then align, what's it called again? I can never remember the names. Flex box. Okay, flex box, there we go. Properties, display flex, yes, flex direction. Not worry about too much about that. I've only got one thing, so I don't need to worry. It's justify content is what I want. So it's going to be centered. Justify content, and then I want it to be center. And then is there? Let's have a look. Is there a vertical? You want to keep it in the middle, or is that too much? Say align items. So say center. Center. If I can type, center. Alright. strange. Why is that? Ah, because I've set this height and width. Right, I see it now. Oh. Okay. Right, so that's padding. I think the cards don't really need that styling. Do they need max width? Probably not. Now this is getting to the UI part. And we're not really there yet, so I wouldn't waste too much time at this point on the user interface. What I'm trying to do is get the major components in, and then I go back and then sort of, not exactly to the drawing board, but to the UI specifically. Is this a good UI? Is it easy to use? Now that I have the majority of the functionality kicked in. Okay, so as you can see, here's a card. So then I can like it, or I could collect it, or whatever I want to do with it. Okay. And yeah, nice. You can clearly see that we have got a Pokemon card here. And that Pokemon card is in that shared component, and now that's being loaded into the main app module because it controls this right hand side nav as I have it up above at the very top level, and that's the top level component. And that shared components is imported into it. But it does mean that we could, for example, have this card which shows something like this, and then some actions, be that, you know, to look at more detail, to, you know, add to my Pokedex, to battle, for example. I'd probably switch those around as well, so the back, the Wardall's here, and that this Wardall is facing me. And then I'd start looking at the contents of the text. What additional buttons do I want? You know, I'd have a look, you know, maybe realistically at some of these cards, trying to decide, do I like these card designs? Is there something that I would like to do in that way? I may even, if it was up to me, while that's loading, because we have like a loading state, and at this point the loading is done there, but there are, like if I was to use this elsewhere, let's say I had a set of these cards, I could have like a loading state with the Pokemon picture on the back. Well, that way. And then once it's finished loading, it will then render. So you could even render it and make it like flip, or slide in and slide out. You can spend a lot of time in the user interface, as in the UI, UX, and putting little bits of polish in there that really help. Now we have not went to any real polish inside this application. It's mostly been a functional deep dive. So now we have another component which does have an input, but we're not binding that input directly on the screen. We are computing values based off that input, and it could be a couple of inputs realistically that you're then changing that logic, and sometimes you may want to change it and sometimes you don't, depending on the internal state, like visual state. So that's why that change detector is beneficial, because I can have logic based on the incoming data to determine what outcome I should do, rather than having inputs directly bound in all the time. Horses for courses, there are use cases for both. I hope you find this video useful, and join me next week where I have another video while we continue to have a look at this app. In particular, I'm probably going to add more of a tour screen, as every application when you start, generally it's your first time using that application, you normally give them some sort of introduction to your application, and we're going to do that. If you find that interesting, join me on the next video. Ciao.
Can I launch products on the internet that make money? You'll have to follow me to find out. Then hit the subscribe button and join me on my journey.